My next question is about striking the right balance between affordability and addressing acute pain points for learners, because in such a mission-driven sector like edtech, many founders find it quite difficult to strike that balance. And in any area of edtech, from K-12 to higher education to workforce development, there's always this who pays debate. Is it parents? Is it students? Is it governments, employers? How do you approach this, and how do you decide who should pay for your product?
Yeah, so I think it partly depends on who gets the value from it. And then part of it also just depends on what do you try to do initially and what you want to do at scale. Because I think there's definitely situations where if you want to start with the most difficult buyer, that might take you a very, very long time to get traction versus if you try to start on the sides and then you edge your way in a couple of different models or go-to-market model. Obviously, direct to user, consumer, everybody understands it. You're doing digital marketing to go after a consumer, make them aware of it. You create some things to promote it. TikTok, etc. You're out there. So that's a direct-to-consumer model. The decision there is an individual thinks through something, wants to do it. And if you look at most of the kind of marketing around college degrees or college programs or even like MOOC programs or certificate programs, most of that is B2C. It's basically Google AdWords, things like that. And by the way, that's also probably the one way in which you get scaled the fastest if it's successful, because it's easy to access direct over top consumers in that way. And you're really building a kind of a marketing engine. Then you have certain ones where the decision maker gets to dictate to the buyer or user that they're going to use it. Think as example, you're selling to a parent and your parent is going to force the kid to go to the kind of coding camps or karate classes. Or it's like the parent says, you know what, you're going to do it. I'm going to pay for it. You will go do it. And so while on one hand, of course, you're serving the learner, you want to make sure the learner is happy and excited about the program. Really, you're selling to the decision maker because they actually have the money and they are the one that's forcing the learner. Tutoring services is a great example of this. Yes, there are some people that pay for tutoring themselves. Oftentimes, including myself, I will go pay for Chinese tutoring for my kid and make my kid sit in front of the computer to learn Chinese. And so that is a slightly different model. Then there's a situation where decision maker recommends to the buyer. And so this is now even tougher because just winning the decision maker is not enough. The buyer still has their own ability to decide if they want to buy. But I think the best example in education is higher ed, where a professor says, I'm going to adopt this courseware and this book or textbook. I'm going to require it in my class. But ultimately, student may decide, I still want to buy it. And so you're still selling that again. InStride actually has a somewhat similar thing. We go sell to a CEO or CHRO and we say, hey, this is an amazing strategic education program that's aligned to what you're trying to do. But a big part of what we still have to do is make sure employees are aware of it, employees are excited about it. Then you have a government, like a central one, right? Where it's a government or somebody. K-12 is often like this, right? In the US, states buy every 7 years. They do this big song and dance, say, hey guys, we are about to go procure for the next 7 years. Everybody show up and then they evaluate and then they say, hey, for American US history, we're going to pick these 3 providers. We're going to buy from these 3. And that's can be very binary. You either win it, which is tens of $millions, or you don't. In which case it might be a 0. And that's in many cases why a lot of the publishers actually exited the K-12 because it was so lumpy. And lots of these is more traditional B2B. Oftentimes for us, we try to sell to a CEO or CHRO. But in the B2B, you might also sell to L&D. You might also sell to an IT contact, or you might even sell to individual business leaders who want a freemium service that then they buy.